Welcome back. This class is going to be on YouTuber and author Ali Abdaal. Is it possible to feel good about being productive? Well, Ali believes so. And we're also going to cover whether IGAs can actually be chaotic, because we think they can. As we've mentioned previously, we've been typing for the last couple of years, and the types that we do reveal in these classes have been confirmed by Shan and Dave, and we're simply just using this as a way to kind of document our journey through typing and kind of talk through the parts that we struggled with the most, hoping that this information might help you if you are also trying to learn to type.
Ali Abdaal is a former medical doctor, and I think the most followed productivity YouTuber on the platform, and he's the author of a new book called Feel Good Productivity. I started to watch his videos in the middle of last year, and I came in with the bias that he's possibly a savior sleep, a thinker, an introvert, but not last because he talks and teaches way too well.
I started watching Ali's videos probably around the same time as you, I think, and given he's kind of positioned himself as like the productivity guru or go-to guy, I kind of had the bias that he's probably more likely to be an observer and probably a thinker as well.
We first want to take a look at Ali's social type because it really was the first thing that hit us in the face and that we felt like we could prove and had like really good footage on. And it's also was interesting for the rest of our typing process because it actually confused us when figuring out his late human need a bit later on.
It's kind of cute if you share the numbers. Be like, oh, I made $100 here and there. At the point where the numbers are in the millions, now there's like, it's maybe not that inspiring anymore because most people are not at that level, and so it just starts to feel absurd. B, it starts to feel too much like bragging. C, in a way, you're kind of painting a target on your back, in a way, because like, you know, if people can sort of know what our top line business revenue is, then they can maybe sort of start making assumptions as to how much money I've got in my personal bank account. And whether or not those numbers are accurate, it like starts to genuinely be like, oh, hang on, this is something to take a little bit more seriously.
There's also an element of your audience are the customers in a way.
Yeah.
They actually are. Like as a creator business, when you're talking and you put out the numbers and you make it public, it can feel like, look how much money I made from you.
Yeah.
You know, do you ever get pushback about that it's sort of a secular type of...
Yeah, but I think partly it feels weird if we have the vibe that selling is like evil or wrong.
And that there's no value.
And there's no value, yeah.
If you believe that, if the context is like what you're selling is nonsense, then yes, it feels ridiculous.
Yeah.
But if the buyers are like, that is how valuable it is.
Yeah,
then it does. It's like...
I think it still feels weird because... You know, it was only a few years ago that I first got over my fear of selling anything online. And when I was first making this course, this YouTuber Academy, it was about 2.5 years ago now. I was initially thinking, you know what, let me just pre-record everything, put it online for $200. I can guarantee it's going to be worth way more than $200. So it's like, I feel comfortable with that. And then I spoke to a couple of creator friends, Tiago Forte and David Perel, who ran their own courses. And they challenged me like, you know, what if you had to sell it for $2,000? How would that change your approach to it? And I was like, whoa, no, I couldn't possibly sell anything for $2,000. That's like way too much. And they were like, why not? And then we had a bit of a therapy session. And after all that, kind of the conclusion was, hey, we're not forcing anyone to buy this. If people are willing to pay the money for it, then we'll give them a great experience. We've hired a whole team just to help with the customer success side of things. We have a very liberal money back guarantee. It's like all these things. And yet there's still a part of me that feels guilty about selling stuff.
This clip is a really good example of demon flex. Previously in the interview, he talked about the revenue that he makes and how his revenue increased throughout the years, which is now in the multiple millions. And here we see how uncomfortable he gets talking about that and how he's really processing the demon flex of, oh, it seems like bragging. Oh, it seems like I'm above other people. Oh, I'm painting a target on my back because I'm putting myself at too high of a place in the tribe. And he's uncomfortable with that. He doesn't want to do that. And he has a hard time processing selling. He feels guilty about it. So we do see him here in a demon state talking about flexing.
Okay, so now that we've seen demon flex, the question is he a generalist or is he a specialist? So let's take a look at this clip and see what we can see.
The point of this creator thing is, at least the way I think about it, is like I got into this game because I wanted to build a career and a life on my own terms.
Yeah.
I wanted to have the freedom to do what I want and the sort of the autonomy to not do things I don't want to have to do. And having deadlines on videos, I'm surprised I feel so strongly about this, but having deadlines on videos is like having another job. And that was what I left medicine to avoid the feeling of. So we sort of have cut down on our sponsorship deals for the last couple of months, kind of focusing on the book. We're probably going to ramp them back up, but Angus and the rest of my team are negotiating with sponsors to basically have the deadline so far in the future that I can act as if we never have a sponsorship deadline. So those are like the two areas of the business where this year I've recognized
that's really
kind of annoying.
Yeah, it's really great.
So here we see that Ali is saying that he's driven by freedom and autonomy. He wants to be his own boss. He wants to have control of his work. He wants to do it his way. And he doesn't want a second job. He doesn't want another job. He just wants this job that he has created for himself. And this is often what, well, probably is the main driver of the number twos, is having that freedom and autonomy for their entire life and what they do.
And he didn't say it in this clip, but he describes himself generally as less risk averse than a lot of other people. And I think his life path with like leaving medicine for YouTube really proves that he is.
Yeah. So at this point we were thinking he definitely sounds like a number two. But we also hear him talking about wanting freedom, which is often something that we associate with the OEs wanting freedom and variety. And we also found ourselves thinking that Ali seems chaotic. Also, other people that he interacts with have the same perspective.
Several people, yes.
So let's have a look at this clip and we'll see what we see here.
What is one quality that you dread about Ali?
His propensity to change his mind very quickly.
Care to elaborate?
Okay, there's a classic example from October of last year when you had the idea that we were going to do 100 videos in 100 days to end 2020. And they started off on the Monday as, yes, we're going to do it. By the Wednesday it was, actually no, I can't be bothered to do it. On the Thursday it was, oh yeah, we're going to do it again. On the Saturday it was, no, we're not going to do it. I think then you decided we were going to do it again, and then by the time the next Monday meeting came around, we weren't going to do it. I think that's like a classic example.
Yep, fair play.
So the feedback here that Ali is getting is that he changes his mind a lot, he forgets what he says, then he changes his mind and wants something else, and this is really frustrating for the people working with him. So then we had to go back and relook at our definition of chaotic, because there is chaotic, which is an anecdote, and then there's the actual human need, which is not chaotic. So when we were looking at Ali, he is very much trying to conclude with his productivity, and he's trying to sell a way for how to do things. He has like courses on how to get into medical school, he's got all of his productivity stuff, so he's already narrowed down, which is a human need, on how to do something.
Top 3 tips for someone looking to leave the 9 to 5. I think really the way you leave the 9 to 5 is by making money outside of the 9 to 5 that will sustain your living. Now, how do you make money outside of the 9 to 5? Well, I've got a video over there called How to Make Money on the Internet, the 3 levels. Basically, you can learn a skill and then sell that skill to people who will pay for that skill. For example, you could decide to learn video editing and then offer your skills to YouTubers who will want to pay for video editing to be done. And then if you can make enough money through freelancing that particular service, then you can make enough money to leave the 9 to 5. I'd recommend reading Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Work Week, which talks all about the deal approach: delegate, eliminate, automate, and then leverage, or something like that, which is sort of like a fairly, step-by-step playbook on how to get enough career capital to leave the 9 to 5. Another really good book is Cal Newport's So Good They Can't Ignore You. His basic spiel is that if you can just get really good at your job, then you acquire career capital, and then you can cash in that career capital to, for example, work remotely, or for example, get a job doing something else potentially. But really the key is to be able to sustain your living and then take that jump. Generally, my advice would be to try and do the side hustle thing while you've got a full-time job, the 9 to 5. You've got plenty of time in the weekends and evenings to learn skills, try and sell them, potentially make products, loads of more details in that video. You shouldn't quit the job and then figure out how to make money. It should be figure out how to make money. You end up in this overlap stage. A friend of mine called Sean has written a book called Overlap, linked in the video description as well, which is all about this. You overlap your 9 to 5 with your ability to make money online, and then, or generally online, and then you can leave the 9 to 5 once you've sustained your living.
So in this other interview, is this an open-ended we'll see conversation? No, it really isn't. He gets asked a question about leaving the 9 to 5, and he already has a pre-planned answer in his head. Like, yeah, you do this in a couple of stages. First you do this, then you do the next thing, then you do the next thing. It's already concluded, it's already processed, it's organized into stages, and he can very quickly and easily bring up this information and just teach. And it's not open, it's not narrowed down. Like, you ask me a question, here's what you have to do. this is my way for what I would recommend. If you think back to our last class on Dr. K's answers were always more open-ended, more explorative. Like he was asked a question and was connecting the answer to the question to different multiple things. But this is not what you get from Ali. From Ali, you get a streamlined answer and a step-by-step process. And another thing about OI, especially about NI, it wants to make everything the same.
The thing is, like, everything is a list. This is some I think this is advice from like non-fiction writing. Fundamentally, every non-fiction book is a listicle. It's just like sometimes packaged up in a non-listically kind of way. Atomic Habits is a listicle. The 4 Habits of Behavior Change. The 4 Hour Workweek is a listicle. Everything is a listicle at the end of the day.
Interesting.
And so this is something that we say to our students in the YouTuber Academy. When in doubt, just think about list. Just like, what is the list of things? If you were talking to yourself from 2 years ago, what is 3 or 5 or 7? We like odd numbers. 3 or 5 or 7 things you would have wanted to know, and then just talk about those things. And that's it.
Everything is a listicle. Everything is the same. All these non-fiction books are listicles. My course, it's a listicle. All my videos, all listicles. It's all the same. If you don't know what to do a listicle, follow my process. He has it streamlined. He has his way. And this is how he talks consistently. Yes, is he actually chaotic? Does his behavior present as chaotic? It does. But when you ask him a question, it's all narrowed down. It's all streamlined. It's organized. You'll get to know his way.
So in the previous clip, we hinted that Ali is a lead NI, so this would make him an observer. But for the sake of this video, we're going to go through and we're going to prove it.
In the summer before going to med school for the first time, I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy my first Apple product. I'm going to buy a MacBook. And I found some guy on Craigslist, and he was selling me a MacBook Air for $1,000, £1,000. And so I met up with this guy at Paddington Station and handed him over £1,000 in cash. He gave me this MacBook. And it only transpired like a few hours later, I realized that he'd sold me like a 4-year-old model that was obsolete and defunct and stuff. So I was like, I had this £1,000 deficit. This was like the most money I'd ever earned in my life. And it had been sort of scammed out of me by this random grifter guy. So I thought, okay, cool. I need a way to make money. And I still have the Evernote file from 2012 where I sort of had some business ideas written down. And I kind of realized that, okay, I'm good at, I was pretty good at these medical entrance exams. I think I'm pretty good at teaching, and I know how to make websites. So those 3 factors combined to create this business where I was like, I can teach courses for medical students or medical applicants, and I can make a website that sort of advertises them around the UK.
A guy scams him because Ali didn't check the sensory. But instead of going after the guy, what is his focus on? His focus is on the money, losing the money, but then it goes from I lost the money to how do I make more? I also want to note this is a really great kind of growth mindset perspective to have, because he's going from this shitty thing happened to me and it was a shitty situation, but how do I get myself out of it? What is the solutions? How do I make the situation better for myself? And so that's what he did.
But now we know that Ali's a number 2. He's savior NI, and he's an observer. And we also know that he writes books about feeling good. So is he a feeler or is he a thinker?
I think that is a symptom of the fundamental issue. The fundamental issue is that you care more about how people feel, and I care more about what people say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably, yes.
Or actually, I also care about what people feel, but I will take their word for what they're saying as being truly reflective of their actual feelings. Whereas you would take your intuition about what they're feeling based on what they're saying and their body language and the way they are, and Ali, your eyes look a bit weird, are you feeling? No. Look, I literally mean what I say. You would take into account all these different factors, which have shown to be, in studies, to be not particularly useful in actually analysing human emotion.
Okay.
See the book Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell.
Sure. So you're saying my approach is wrong?
Yes.
Why?
I'm not saying your approach is wrong, I'm kidding.
Okay.
I'm saying that you feel... I feel like my approach is taking people's word for how they're feeling. Your approach is a little bit more paternalistic, that, oh, well, you're saying X, but I know that deep down you probably feel Y, therefore I'm going to treat you as if you're saying Y.
Right, okay, let's unpack this.
Whereas mine is, you're saying X, and maybe you're feeling Y, but I trust that you have agency to say how you feel, and therefore you're actually feeling X. Yeah. And I will behave accordingly.
Okay, it's clear that our different approaches here.
So Ali knows that he cares less about what people actually feel and more about what people say. This is the start of the conversation with his roommate. And I really love how honest Ali is about all these things. Just another hint for double decider. Like, he can see the light and dark in himself quite easily, and he's aware how that might get difficult for other people, but he really holds his ground. That approach of looking at feelings directly and having a intuition about feelings that he kind of makes fun of. It's this weird thing for him that science shows that it isn't actually a good way to deal with emotions, that he rather takes people's word at face value, which might also be a sign for maybe double masculine ST. And you can also see that he's very comfortable, similar to Dr. K, just disagreeing with someone on the spot and telling them flat out that they're wrong in a calm savior state.
And we've seen Ali disagreeing in a savior state. So we've seen savior TI. So then we should be able to see demon FE.
They want the tool, they want the system, they want the morning routine. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think the emotional piece is so... Like, I remember the first time I really came across that idea was reading Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art. And he calls it the resistance with a capital R.
Yeah.
And like, when I read that book, it just sort of hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, oh my fucking God, like this is the thing. Like, he's just describing in like this whole book exactly what I feel when I procrastinate. It's this resistance. And what it took for me to kind of get over that was a recognition that the resistance is an internal emotional thing and almost treating myself like a system. Whereas I think when it comes to kind of like, even hearing you say that right now, talking about emotions, like the part of me that was reading Lifehacker back in the day is thinking, oh, come on, emotions, like what bullshit is this?
Get over it.
Get over it, man, come on. And so many people I speak to, you know, there's that thing of, if I could just find the right tool, if I could just find the right technique, then I wouldn't procrastinate so much. Or if I could just find the right meds for my ADHD or whatever the thing is.
Sure.
Like, it seems to go in waves in terms of what people think the magic bullet is. But fundamentally, it just comes down to this thing of you're unproductive because you don't feel like doing the thing.
Yeah.
No one ever struggles with procrastination watching Netflix or hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
That's not a thing. We struggle with procrastination when it comes to writing that blog post or like studying for that exam or like doing that slightly boring, annoying PowerPoint at work that we don't really want to, or like asking our manager for a raise. The stuff that we feel that resistance.
Yeah.
And so part of part of my goal with the book was to try and figure out, okay, cool. We know that's a thing. So therefore, what are the tools that we can use to kind of treat emotions as something important, treat them sincerely, rather than thinking of it as like, oh, I'm just a pussy because I'm not like grinding like David Goggins does, or whatever the narratives sometimes are.
So in this clip with Mark Manson, who has been typed as audio TI NI sleep blast play consume, notice how Ali slows down when he's asked about emotions. So emotions are something that he's obviously discovered. He's suddenly discovered the importance of how much you can't ignore the emotions, how they control everything that you do, especially when you're trying to be productive. And this is what he's based his whole book on. But then he also comes back to the tools. What tools can you use to help you deal with the emotions?
The author of Feel Good Productivity is in fact a savior thinker who's struggling to deal with emotions, and that's why he wrote the book. And we didn't really get into it in detail, but he is savior TI and demon FE. And earlier clips that we showed show that he's probably savior sleep because he's so processed, because he has his ready to go answers and can just lay them out. But can we also see demon play?
What is something you've learned from your assistant? What have I learned from you?
Take your time.
That take too much time.
Wow. Wow. I literally listed like 6 things. Wow.
I think you're very good at making people feel... Oh, Dan, you're here as well. Hi. I think you're very good at making people feel at ease and comfortable.
Okay.
And I really admire the way that you lead some of the sessions of a part-time YouTuber Academy. You can very much relate to the struggles that people are having on like an emotional level. And that's something that I struggle with at times. Maybe, 1 or 2 times a year I struggle to relate to people on an emotional level. I think you do a really good job of that. And so I also really admire your positivity and enthusiasm and stuff. And generally, when you enter a room or when you enter a Zoom call, the whole sort of vibe is just a little bit uplifted. And so I try and model part of that off of you.
Oh, that's really nice.
That's good,
I did
isn't
not
it?
know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you.
Anyway.
This clip is also a really great example for demon FE. When he looks at the tribe, what behavior is he actually tracking? Like how the vibe changes, how they make others feel. And also he processes how he emotionally relates to others. And as a double decider with demon FE, he's aware that he's not that great at it either. But how does he react when he gets asked a question about what he'd learned from his assistant Elizabeth? So how do you relate from others, essentially? Well, He doesn't have a pre-processed answer ready to go. He stops and pauses and thinks. And it takes longer and longer. And we hear crickets in the background. Thank you, editor, for that. So he is not responsible for jumping in and just immediately interacting with the tribe. He's just responsible to sort out what he actually thinks, and he doesn't mind taking his sweet time.
Admittedly, the Blast Fist consume coin was something that we kind of struggled with, and one that we actually had to go back and revisit. As we talked about earlier, we thought that he was originally OE because we had the number 2 bias, and we thought we were hearing OE language. And so therefore we thought that he was savvy consume because he does seem to do a lot of consume, or at least that's how it appears. So we thought he must be a consumer. But we actually had to go back and have a look once we realized he was NI.
I don't know. I just feel like at every step along the journey, I have tried to genuinely make it enjoyable for myself, because I think when things feel good, when they're fun, they become more sustainable. And I don't like the idea of having to work as if I'm climbing up a hill. I'd rather feel as if I'm sliding downhill. But at the same time, I've been reading so much about business and management and leadership and operations. And I had my own business like 5 years before the YouTube channel, which taught me a lot. And, I made so many mistakes about, in terms of running a business. So when I started the YouTube channel,
that business was selling courses about getting into med school.
Exactly, yeah. So like physical courses in real life, we'd book out a hotel room.
Oh, physical courses.
Yeah, this was pre-online course kind of.
You did it analog.
Yeah. Analog courses.
The old school way.
And the YouTube videos were to promote those physical classes?
Exactly. So in like 2012, I started this business. The story was I was doing private tutoring and stuff when I was in high school, in secondary school in the UK.
So in this clip, we hear him mention that he does consume. He read all these business books, but he was consuming for a purpose, and it was for his business. Because then he goes on to say that he had been tutoring for a long time. He started tutoring when he was in high school. The business he had before he started his YouTube business was actually running workshops. So teaching is something that is natural to him and something that he has been doing for a long time.
Yeah, and while he reads the books, while he learns the theory, he learns by doing and he learns by building.
Yeah, there's a phrase, a doctor is a teacher. Like, you're trying to break things down, you're trying to understand things, you're trying to explain them to patients, but you're also trying to explain them to your colleagues, you're trying to running them by a senior, you're trying to break things down in an explainable way. You're also kind of teaching the people, the juniors below you. It's a very teaching-y type thing. And so I think that's a skill set that I've had for most of my life. I would always be the guy helping kids out with their homework, and I did private tutoring when I was younger as a way of making money off the internet. Being a medical student, being a doctor, I would always try my best to teach the people who are younger than me. And when my YouTube channel started, it wasn't an educational channel. I actually started making musical song covers, and I wanted to be the next Kurt Schneider and Boyce Avenue and these sort of YouTube cover artists that would, sing covers of popular songs. And so the first 5 or 6 videos are still there, and it's those sorts of videos. No one cared. I have no musical talent. Some of my friends were good at singing. I was like, yeah, I'm going to learn to play the guitar. I'm going to be a big YouTuber. But it was only when I started actually using the fact that I was pretty good at teaching and making educational videos that things started to take off. And so I think fundamentally, I don't think I would have been successful as a Mr. Beast or as an Arak or as a Ryan Trahan or someone who's making more entertainment-y, inspiring-y type content. But I managed to do well by being like, right, guys, today we're going to talk about 5 ways to do well in your BMAT medical school entrance exam. Boom. It was what I needed.
Harry is saying that he has always seen himself as the person responsible for sharing information and teaching others. This is also a good indication of Infodom, because he's actually not bullshitting with the information.
No, he isn't.
He has actually been to medical school and he is teaching what he knows. But the point is that as soon as he learns something, he then turns around and teaches it, which is something that the Savvy Consumers are not doing.
A different approach to figure out the consumer with his blast coin is to play the relativity game. So is Ali more similar to Dr. Drew or more similar to Naval Ravikant? Ali is still pretty young. He's around 30 years old, and he started to teach and talk publicly very early on. As Holly said, as soon as he learns something, he turns around and teaches it. And this is his reputation in the tribe. He is the teacher. He is a professional speaker, so to say. And that is very similar to Dr. Drew, who's also a doctor, but he's also famous for being a radio host and for teaching and for having this kind of public teacher role. With Naval, on the other hand, it's a little bit different. Now he's also famous for teaching on business and happiness, but then came very much later in his life, I think in his 40s or 50s, I don't quite know how old he is, but he's been building and doing his stuff in silence and building companies. He's not, compared to Dr. Drew or Ali, not known as a teacher in the same fashion as a young age. So If we zoom out and if we look at Ali's life path and compare him to the life path of other people, he more closely resembles Dr. Drew than Naval. Ali's full type is audio, NITI, sleep, blast, consume, play, and he's a number 2. So Ali is in fact an IJ, as we've said. He talks about freedom, he wants freedom, but his human need is to conclude, while he's at the same time really chaotic, which might be connected to the NI being feminine. But let's listen to his former assistant Elizabeth and what she has to say about it.
I'm really excited. Let's see how honest or productive Ali is in reality. Let's do it. Did he say minimalistic?
Before 9 a.m, take off my mouth tape and turn off my minimalistic alarm clock.
Minimalistic. The only thing minimalistic about Ali Abdaal is his standards for what to buy and not to buy. There is, even on that desk, there is so much stuff. Like, what is going on? There's absolutely nothing minimalistic. And the fact that he even thinks he needs a manual watch. Between all his tech devices, there's more watches within 2 meters of him than there is on this vlog. So I just, okay.
Once my heel shake is ready, I join my daily Zoom co-working group. Today we've got 150 people.
This is actually very cute when he was doing this. I don't know why he stopped, because I think we still get emails of people asking when the co-working sessions will start again. So that was quite sad. And it always falls upon me because Ali announces things and then he kind of forgets about them or stops them. So, but the emails don't stop coming in. So I only find out about things sometimes when I get 200 emails from people asking where the link to something that Ali promised that he would do would be. So yeah, look at the amount of mugs on that table. There's 1, 2, 3 mugs that I can see, and like a drinking pitcher of water, and it's such, and the playing cards. Ali, his desk is the biggest mess. Oh my god, the rapping.
Back to the computer, and from 3 to 4 p.m. I have a freestyle rap coaching session with Gavin.
Gavin, bless your heart, babe. Whatever Gavin's being paid, he's not being paid enough. The reason I'm actually taking the piss out of Ali for the rapping is just to put this in context. This man has probably still never heard a rap song in his life. He just doesn't listen to this kind of music. And I remember meeting Paramedic Sonasir with Ali, and we were trying to introduce him to some like soft rap, and Ali would just like not have it. He doesn't like it. So the fact that the fact that he decided to become a rapper or to learn to rap better is just so like left field, so shocking to me. I cannot believe it. This is a man who probably thinks Tupac is part of his Gymshark sponsorship deal. Like, oh.
And we end the day by having a chat while I'm doing weird things with a deck of cards in my hand.
Ali always does that. He always has a deck of cards in his hands, and he's always making noises with something. So it can be like a deck of cards, or he's just fidgeting, or or writing, or his keywords. I don't actually think this was a productive day at all, because he didn't get much done. I guess he did some writing with the Zoom call, but everything else was just messing about with various coaches. So I wouldn't call it a productive day. Definitely not a stupendously productive day.